Hello, everyone. Today we continue with the story of Noah and the flood. If you recall from last week, I said the flood story could be divided into 10 frames. Well, today we're going to cover frames 3 through 5. And so frame 3, the first one that we get today, is about Noah and the animals boarding the ark. And so chapter 7, verse 1 says, "Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all of your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. And 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him." Noah was described as righteous by the narrator in chapter 6. And here in verse 1, the Lord affirms that righteousness himself. God saying he has seen that Noah is righteous stands in stark contrast to what we saw in chapter 6, verses 5 and 12, where it says that God saw how evil and corrupt the world had become. Now, I do think it's important that we establish why Noah was considered righteous. Noah hadn't gained righteousness by the merit of his work, but rather as an outcome of his faith in God. His faith to believe God and his word, and then to act and follow through with that word, proving that he did, in fact, have faith. The path to righteousness is the same for us today. It's just through a different means. It's not based on building an ark. It's through the blood of Christ on the cross. So it's still based on faith, but now through the work of the cross. And as Noah followed through on his faith with the action of building the ark, so today our faith is dead unless works begin to flow out of that faith, right? Like we see in James 2:17, he says that faith without works is dead. So faith leads to righteousness, and works flowing out of that faith proves that our faith is alive. In verse 2, we see the animals Noah is to take with him on the ark. If you recall from chapter 6, verses 19 and 20, God said, take 2 of every kind of bird, animal, and creatures that move along the ground. Verse 2 here isn't a contradiction of that, but rather just further clarification. More clean animals are needed than unclean, because some of the clean animals will be sacrificed once Noah and his family get off of the ark. And the mate of each animal is included, obviously, so they will be able to be fruitful and multiply the earth post-flood. Now, I think a common question we may have at this point is, how in the world was Noah able to fit all these animals on the ark? Like the ark must have been gigantic to fit all these animals. But I think a good answer, or to provide a good answer, we need to go back to middle school science. Do you remember studying taxonomy, the classification of animals? You may remember kingdom and phylum and class, order, family, genus, and species. And each one had these weird scientific names. Like you couldn't just say that the species was dog. It's Canis familiaris. Like, I don't know why it has to be so difficult. But to use dog as an example, today we have many different breeds of dogs: golden retrievers, labs, bulldogs, poodles, chihuahuas. Like, these are all subspecies using the classification system. But when Genesis, when it says kinds of animals during the flood story, it's most likely either referring to the species or even the genus. If it was a species, then there was just one kind of dog, not every different type of breed. Genus would narrow the number of animals down even more. For example, wolves, dogs, coyotes, and golden jackals all come from the same genus. So either way, this narrows the list of animals down considerably. It makes it more feasible that all were able to fit on the ark. From verse 4, we see that it took 7 days for them to load up the ark with the animals. And then after that, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And then in verse 5, we get the repeated refrain from the end of chapter 6 that Noah did all that God had commanded him. Again, we see that in this story, God is the one doing the talking, and Noah is simply obeying with action, and he doesn't even really talk. And so Noah is a man of faith that leads to action. He's not just one to talk, but to follow through. Our next frame will cover 11 verses, and it shows the beginning of the flood with Noah and the animals as the main actor. And so frame 4, during this frame, we'll get increasing detail, which is building the tension of the story, and then it ends with the climactic moment of God shutting the door to the ark. So verse 6, Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. Man, he'd been building for a long time. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood, of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground. 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 7th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark, they and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. The animals coming to Noah is reminiscent of when God brought all the animals before Adam for him to name. This time he brings them to Noah so that he can preserve them. And a little hint for later on, you may want to start looking for parallels between the creation story and the flood story that we're going to continue to read. Noah's age, followed by the exact day and the month of the flood starting, shows the importance of the story and also its historical credibility. In verse 11, we see the reversal of the separation of water below and above from day 2 of creation. The earth is being returned to its pre-creation state of chaos here in the flood. The prophets also in the Old Testament will use this same imagery to talk about the day of the Lord's judgment, the coming day of his judgment. Now, after the sudden burst of water being dropped on the earth and also springing up from the ground, we see from verse 12 that it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. Noah and his family make it onto the ark the day this happens. They do exactly as God commands them, and then God shuts the door to the ark. Like, think of the drama of this moment. I know that the flood story is something we've heard our whole lives. If you grew up in Sunday school, you heard about this story. But we need to put ourselves in the situation. There's about to be this violent burst of water that engulfs the entire earth, completely destroying everything. Noah and his family board the ark after watching the animals board, which took 7 days. And now chaos is about to take place, but God shuts the door, preserving and protecting them. It's very important that God is the one who shuts the door. This reveals his sovereignty over the situation. It shows that it's his divine grace that has allowed Noah, his family, and the animals to be spared. It also makes him the judge of the destruction that will ensue. It says that people kind of made fun of Noah and they weren't repentant at all. They obviously thought he was foolish to build this ark. But what if at this last moment when they see that the earth is becoming chaotic, what if they're running to the ark and Noah's the one that shuts the door? That makes him the bad guy, if you will. But the fact that God shut the door supernaturally just kind of takes our responsibility off Noah. But God, as we know, is the one who is our judge. And so Noah didn't judge his peers. God did, and he is sovereign to do so. This is a pattern for us to follow as well. We should focus on being obedient to what God says and leave the responsibility of judgment to him. I think we can also draw a conclusion based on the fact that there was one door that led to the saving of Noah and his family. The same is true for us today. Jesus is the door that leads to the saving of mankind. He is the only way. Now we turn to our final frame of the day, frame 5, and it speaks to the triumphant flood. Verse 17, the flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry ground in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living creature that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Verse 23 states the theme of this entire frame, that he blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the earth. But Noah and those who were with him were saved. This is the peak of the flood story. The waters rise to the height of covering the highest mountain, and we see that the destruction is total. All living creatures with flesh, with the breath of life, and all mankind is completely destroyed. There is now just this eerie, silent earth with high waters and this floating ark. God's judgment against the evil world has won, but he has also preserved a remnant of life that has the hope of a new beginning. They now just wait for the waters to recede. At this point, we've pretty much made it through half of Noah's story. It may not seem like there is, that much to really learn yet, but we need to remember that we're still right in the middle of the story. Once we complete this whole narrative, there's going to be a lot more to discuss. We need the totality of the story before we can do that, though. So let's just keep gathering information. I would pay close attention to the listing of numbers and their order for the flood story, something that we'll come back to. Let's also think about how this flood story may fit into the overall narrative of Genesis 1 through 11. These are all things that we'll get to here in a bit. But for now, that is chapter 7. Let me leave you with 4 takeaways that we can talk through in our groups about chapter 7. Number 1, Noah's righteousness came from his faith in God, not his own merit, something that is the same for us today. Number 2, faith without works is dead. True faith leads to action. Noah, God, whenever he came to Noah, he didn't just drop an ark out of the sky. Like, Noah had to build it. I think oftentimes we're stuck crying out to God to, drop something out of thin air for us instead of building and acting upon what he has already said. Number 3, the flood story parallels creation and foreshadows future judgment. And then finally, number 4, God preserves a remnant for a new beginning amidst judgment. And so we definitely see through the flood story God's judgment taking place, but there's also his grace and mercy that he didn't just wipe out everyone. He provided safety and protection and the preservation of Noah and his family so that mankind could continue to have a relationship with God. And so that's Genesis chapter 7. I hope that you have a great week. I'll see you next time for chapter 8.